They say life in this city has a way of hitting you sideways, especially when you think you've got it all figured out. Even in the quietest corners of your Upper East Side brownstone, something's brewing, ready to explode. I never believed it, not for a second, especially not for me. But that's how it goes, right? Looking back, the woman I was just months ago feels like a stranger. But the day it all started, that's crystal clear, like it was yesterday. The memory surfaces now as I stand in my kitchen, making tea, hands just barely shaking. A ghost of a smile plays on my lips, a bitter, sweet warmth spreading in my chest. It began with a dripping faucet in the powder room, such a tiny thing to trigger so much chaos. The drip pushed me to call a repair service. A last-minute thing, really, and that call, well, it brought Jake and Ethan crashing into my life like a subway train roaring through a quiet station. If you'd asked me before, I'd have sworn I was content. Married nearly 30 years, penthouse overlooking Central Park, a husband who provided. Predictability, comfort, not unhappy, exactly, just restless. Richard, my husband, lived and breathed his Wall Street firm, energy spent by the time he got home each night. Conversations dwindled, routine replaced romance, and the passion of our early years faded into a comfortable silence, leaving me somewhere between settled and yearning. And then, Jake arrived. I can still see him standing there like he belonged, his gaze direct, but warm. He was there to fix a faucet, but in an instant he became something more, something I didn't even know I was looking for. And then Ethan, but maybe I'm jumping ahead. The story I'm about to tell isn't about simple mistakes. I don't need your pity or your judgment. I've made peace with what happened, though it cost more than I ever imagined. My life, so carefully constructed, unraveled in ways that still leave me breathless. Even now, I wonder if it could have ended differently, if I could have just not opened that door. But maybe, just maybe, some doors are meant to be opened. You'll have to be the judge of that. It was a gray Tuesday morning when the call came. Richard had left early, as usual, leaving me with a half-empty coffee cup and the city silence filtering in through the windows. I was wiping down the marble counters when I noticed a damp spot under the sink in the powder room. It had grown over the week, and now a steady drip was forming a puddle on the tile. I tried to ignore it at first. We'd had our share of repairs in this old building, and I dreaded another hassle. But with the dripping now constant, I called a repair company, begging for someone to come ASAP. An hour later, a knock. I opened the door to Jake, young, mid-20s maybe, lean build, the kind of effortless confidence that suggested he was used to being looked at. Dark, steady eyes, and a warm, genuine smile that softened his otherwise sharp features. Jeans, a black t-shirt, tool belt slung low. "Morning," he greeted, glancing past me into the apartment. "Got a call about a leak?" "Yes. Thank you for coming so quickly," I said, stepping aside. "It's just down the hall." He followed. Footsteps quiet on the parquet floors. There was a calmness about him, an easygoing confidence that felt at odds with his youth. I caught myself glancing at him, the way he moved, the hint of a tattoo peeking from under his sleeve. Refreshing somehow to have someone so different from Richard here, someone vibrant, unrestrained. As he worked, crouched under the sink, back to me, I lingered in the doorway, arms crossed, watching the play of muscles under his shirt as he worked on the pipes. Curiosity, I told myself. It wasn't every day I had company, let alone someone like him. "Shouldn't be long," he said, over his shoulder, startling me. "Looks like just a loose connection." I cleared my throat, shifting my weight. "Oh, good. I was worried it was something major." He smiled again, standing, wiping his hands on a rag. "Nah, you're lucky. Easy fix." Something in the way he looked at me then, steady, unhurried, sparked something I hadn't felt in years. Warmth, awareness. My cheeks flushed, and I looked away, hoping he hadn't noticed. "Do you get a lot of calls like this?" I asked, filling the silence. "Pretty often. People panic, think it's a disaster, but 9 times out of 10, it's simple. Beats being stuck in an office, though." I laughed, a little nervously. "I know the feeling. My husband works insane hours downtown, buried in paperwork. I guess variety is nice." Our eyes met, and for a second, the air felt charged, like static before a thunderstorm. Absurd, of course. What was I doing, standing here, talking to this stranger, feeling these stirrings of something that should have been buried long ago? But the moment passed as he turned back to his tools, leaving me standing there, thoughts racing. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the memory of Jake. The apartment felt emptier. Richard's nightly silences heavier. Foolish, I told myself. Just the novelty of someone different, someone who reminded me of when I was young, impulsive, before life became predictable. But the next morning, finding myself checking the powder room faucet again, seeing if the drip had returned, I knew I was searching for an excuse, a pretense to call him back. And I did. Barely a day later, Jake returned, this time with an easy familiarity that both thrilled and unnerved me. The way he looked at me, appraising, knowing, left little to the imagination. He must have known there was no real problem with the faucet, but he said nothing, just smiled that same quiet smile as he set down his tools. As he worked, he asked about my life, my interests, effortless, the way he listened, genuinely interested. I felt like I was stepping into another world, one where I wasn't just Mrs. Winters, wife of a successful lawyer, but someone with dreams, desires of her own. No explicit words, nothing overtly inappropriate, but when he finished, there was a lingering pause as he looked at me, gaze warm, lingering just a moment too long. "Anything else I can help you with?" he asked, voice low, almost intimate. I opened my mouth, but the words caught. In that instant, a surge of recklessness, a desire to break free from the quiet, ordered life I'd built. Before I could think, I closed the space between us, my hand brushing against his. For the first time in years, I felt alive. The day after Jake's visit, I drifted through the penthouse like a ghost, mind racing. Every corner felt charged, each room heavy with the echo of his presence. Years since I'd felt like this. Scared me as much as it thrilled me. Richard returned that evening, as always, exhausted from the firm. I watched him across the dining table, brow furrowed over files he'd brought home, barely acknowledging me. The distance between us had grown slowly, a quiet erosion of intimacy. Now, I felt it with painful clarity. Each moment with him only made my mind turn back to Jake. Wrong, I knew. This could only end badly. But that didn't stop me from finding ways to keep him in my orbit, to make him a fixture in the quiet, lonely spaces Richard left behind. A few days later, standing by the phone again, heart pounding, I dialed the repair company. "Good morning, this is Sarah Winters again. I believe there's still an issue with the powder room faucet. Could you possibly send Jake over?" A pause on the other end, a flash of panic. Would they think it strange, requesting him specifically? But the operator seemed unfazed. "Of course, Mrs. Winters, we'll send him over this afternoon." The hours that followed were a blur. Chores that didn't need doing, flitting around the apartment, nervous energy buzzing. Finally, a knock. Jake stood there, tools in hand, a knowing look that sent a thrill through me. "Back again, Mrs. Winters," he said. That slight smile, stepping into the foyer. Eyes lingered on me, just a moment too long, familiar heat rising in my cheeks. "Yes. Well, it seems the leak is still there. Sorry to trouble you again." "No trouble at all," he replied, something in his voice telling me he understood exactly why I'd called. He followed me to the powder room, setting tools down with the same quiet confidence. As he crouched to inspect the pipes, I watched him again, a strange mix of vulnerability and exhilaration. This time, conversation flowed easier. He was from upstate, moved to the city a few years ago on his own, talked about his work, the freedom, the clients he met. "And what about you, Mrs. Winters?" he asked, looking up, those dark, steady eyes. "I mean, this place is beautiful, but don't you get lonely here?" Caught off guard, defenses slipping, a response forming before I could stop it. "Yes," I admitted quietly. I do." Words hanging in the air, an admission I hadn't even allowed myself until that moment. In his eyes, understanding, unspoken empathy. Before I knew it, we were sitting on the powder room floor, his hand on my shoulder, gaze holding mine. Small, almost innocent gesture, but felt like a promise, a dangerous one. "I should finish up here," he said, after a while, voice thick with something like reluctance. But I didn't let go. Hand stayed on his. Brief, reckless moment, we sat there, silence, fingers intertwined. When he finally stood to leave, tension in the air unacknowledged, I watched him go, heart pounding, counting down hours until I'd see him again. Days passed slowly, each blurring into the next, navigating a new routine, finding reasons to see Jake, keeping up appearances with Richard. But fate intervened again. One afternoon, prepping lunch, the oven gave a hiss, puff of smoke billowing from beneath the stovetop. Stepped back, heart racing, smell of burnt metal filling the kitchen. Repair company inevitable. But this time, Ethan arrived. Younger, maybe 19, quiet, brooding energy. Intense gaze, eyes taking everything in, carefully measured scrutiny. "Mrs. Sarah Winters?" he greeted, nodding slightly. "Here to look at the stove." "Yes. Thank you for coming," I replied, stepping aside. Something different about Ethan, quieter, more restrained. But just as intrigued, Jake, easygoing charm. Ethan, a seriousness, grounding, comforting. As he worked, I lingered, questions, small talk. Reserved at first, but gradually opened up. Family, love for fixing things, saving for college, drive in him, determination. So different from my life, removed from the safety, stability that had become my cage. Before I realized, I was opening up to him, sharing details I hadn't spoken aloud in years. Ethan listened patiently, thoughtful expression. When he looked up, warmth in his gaze made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in so long. "Must be hard," he said softly, "living like that, feeling trapped." Nodded, lump in the throat. Yes, it is." Without thinking, reached out. Fingers brushed his arm. Brief, electric moment, he didn't pull away. Just looked at me, gaze steady, unwavering. Then straightened, expression careful. Should get back to work. But even as he turned away, weight of that moment hung between us. Silent promise of something more. Watched him finish, heart racing, wondering what it would be like to let go, leave behind the life I knew, plunge into the unknown. When he left, standing in the kitchen, exhilarated, terrified, knowing I was at the edge, ready to jump. Days wore on, strange rhythm settled in. Tried to keep everything normal, routines Richard expected. But something changed in me, knew it, suspected he did too. Walter rarely questioned, but knew weariness in his eyes, edged to questions when he came home. One evening, looked up from laptop at dinner. "Have you been redecorating? Seems like something's different every time I come home." Smiled, tone light. "Just little things here and there. You know how restless I get." Nodded, but unconvinced. Eyes lingered, reading something he couldn't see. As much as I brushed it off, his question struck a chord. Changes, subtle ones, hinting at hidden life. Scent of aftershave in the powder room, misplaced screwdriver in the kitchen drawer. Tiny, dangerous breadcrumbs. Yet, unable, unwilling to change course. A few days later, Jake, unannounced. Surprised, heart skipped a beat when I opened the door. Saw him, same easy grin. "Just thought I'd check on that faucet," he said casually. But we both knew the truth. Inside, his presence filled the penthouse, brighter rooms, sharper sounds, moved with ease like he belonged. Blissful hours, forgot everything else. He filled a void, hadn't realized was there. Laughter, warmth, banished the silence that haunted me for years. But that evening, preparing for bed, glimpse in the mirror. Woman, fulfilled and terrified, teetering on the edge of the two worlds. Richard's voice echoed, lingering question. Moment, weight of what I was risking, full force. Subtle at first, Richard's demeanor changed. Watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. Gradually, suspicions seeped into interactions, mundane conversations, tense exchanges. One evening after dinner, abruptly, "Did you get the faucet fixed?" Froze, forced a smile. "Oh yes, just loose connection, nothing serious." Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Funny, because I noticed some new charges from the repair company. Seemed like more than just a loose connection. Heart skipped, kept expression calm. I may have called them back to double check, didn't want to risk another leak. Gaze lingered, searching. Moment, feared he could see right through me, knew everything. But then nodded, face unreadable. "Just let me know next time," he said quietly. Tone undercurrent of something. Resentment? Hurt? That night, in bed, familiar thrill of danger mixed with pang of guilt. Years resented Richard's distance, absence. Now, seeing the toll, flicker of doubt. Gone too far. Yet, next morning, quiet kitchen, memory of Jake's laughter lingered. Doubt faded. Crossed a line, no turning back. A week later, Ethan returned. Finished stove work. Unlike Jake, didn't appear unannounced. Called ahead, voice calm, professional. But warmth, quiet anticipation made my heart flutter. When he arrived, he'd taken care to look his best. Crisp shirt, gleam in his eyes, hinted at something beyond repair job. As he worked, easy conversation, quiet, steady presence put me at ease. But as he worked, something strange. Subtle shift in demeanor, guardedness. glanced at me occasionally, gaze intense, weighing something. Finally, spoke. You know, Mrs. Winters, I've seen a lot of people in this line of work. People who have it all but don't realize it. People who take things for granted. Statement hung in the air, unease, referring to me. But his gaze softened, continued. Life is complicated, he said quietly. Sometimes people get lost, forget what's important, and sometimes they find it in unexpected places. Moment, didn't know what to say. Words struck a chord. Inexplicable sadness, reminder of life I'd left behind, pursuing something more. Before I could respond, Ethan placed reassuring hand on shoulder, touch grounding, pulling me back from edge of doubts. Eyes met, brief, electric moment, connection, shared understanding, promise transcended words. Knew then he felt something too. Pull neither could deny. But as he left that evening, strange thought, whisper of suspicion, lingered long after he was gone. Something about his words, demeanor, almost rehearsed. Playing a role? Brushed it off, imagining things. But doubt remained. Seed of unease couldn't shake. A few days later, tidying up, small piece of paper under coffee table. Crumpled, like someone tried to throw it away. Missed. Curious, unfolded it. Heart pounding as I read. Phone number, Ethan's handwriting. Next to it, single word, Jake. Mind raced, piecing together fragments. Glances, words exchanged. Ethan and Jake knew each other. How? Why? Revelation, punch to the gut. Caught up in thrill, fantasy, hadn't considered reality. More to their presence than coincidence. Pulse quickened, sickening realization dawning. Playing me all along? Just another mark? Lonely housewife lured into a trap? Doubt gnawed, but couldn't ignore lingering connection. Part of me wanted to believe sincerity of words, actions, yet knew I couldn't let it go. Needed answers. That evening, Richard came home. New resolve hardened within me. Confront them both, Jake and Ethan. Uncover truth. If they'd been deceiving me, using me, I'd make them pay. Not naive woman to be played for a fool. Whatever game, ready to turn the tables. Next day, couldn't hold back. Needed answers, ready to get them. Called Jake, arranged to meet quiet cafe downtown, wouldn't run into anyone we knew. Drive felt longer than it was, thoughts swirling. Doubts, questions, tried to calm myself, nagging fear. Reckless? What if it was all a game? Jake arrived a few minutes after me, calm, confident as ever, greeted me, easy smile, warm eyes, slid into booth across from me. Moment, resolve faltered, anger softened in face of charm, but couldn't be swayed. Started, voice steady as I could manage. There's something I need to ask you. Raised eyebrow, leaned back slightly. All right, what's on your mind? Hesitated how to phrase it without sounding paranoid, but come this far, no turning back. I found a note with Ethan's number, looked like, you two know each other. Split second, flash of something in his eyes. Surprise? Guilt? Recovered quickly, expression shifting back to calm confidence. Then, he repeated, feigning innocence. Yeah, I know him. We work for the same repair company. Tone casual, but something didn't sit right. Why didn't you mention it before? He shrugged. Didn't think it mattered. We both do our own thing, you know? Not like we're planning anything together. Chuckled, sound forced, hollow, eyes narrowed, studying him. Are you sure about that, Jake? Because lately I can't shake the feeling that there's more going on here than just a few repairs. Smile faded, leaned forward, expression serious. Listen, Sarah, he said quietly, using my name with familiarity, almost a challenge. I don't know what you're implying, but I'm here because I want to be. No one's forcing me. No games. Wanted to believe him, wanted to trust connection we'd shared was real, not some elaborate scheme, but seed of doubt planted, couldn't ignore it. Then why didn't you tell me you knew him? I pressed, voice sharper than intended. He sighed, rubbed back of neck. Because I didn't want to complicate things. I know you've got a life, a husband, didn't want to give you any more reasons to doubt. Words softened me, but only a little. Could see sincerity in his eyes, flicker of vulnerability he rarely showed. Yet, suspicion lingered. Shadow I couldn't shake. Sat in silence, tension thick, unspoken. Finally, reached across table, hand covering mine. Sarah, you've got to trust me. I'm here because I care about you. Nothing more, nothing less. Touch sent familiar warmth through me. Moment, doubts melted away. But as I looked into his eyes, knew this was far from over. Too many questions, too many pieces that didn't fit. not sure I'd ever get answers I needed. Confrontation with Jake left me more conflicted than ever. Part wanted to believe him, swept up in fantasy. Another part, quieter, rational, knew I couldn't ignore warning signs. Something about entire situation felt wrong. Determined to get to bottom of it. A few days later, decided to visit Ethan. Mentioned his apartment once, managed to remember address. Modest complex on outskirts of city. Risk, I knew. But couldn't shake feeling Ethan held key to understanding. Arrived, door slightly ajar. Faint noise from inside. Heart pounded, pushed door open, cautiously stepping into dim apartment. Small, sparsely furnished room. Stack of tools on table, worn leather jacket. Then saw it. Piece of paper on counter, covered in scribbled notes. Leaned in, squinting, list of names. Names I didn't recognize, except one. Sarah Winters. Blood ran cold. My name on that list? Who were the others? Before I could process, footsteps behind me. Turned, Ethan standing in doorway, expression unreadable. Mrs. Winters, he said slowly, tone calm, but edged with something darker. Didn't expect to see you here. Straightened, forcing composure. I wanted to talk to you about Jake, about everything. Gaze sharpened, eyes narrowing slightly. What exactly are you trying to find out? Mind raced, grasping for answer. I need to know if any of this was real. If Jake, if either of you actually cared. Or if it was all just some kind of scheme. Ethan's expression softened. Moment. Saw flicker of something, almost regret. Vanished quickly, replaced by cold, guarded look. Maybe it started as a game. He admitted quietly, voice barely whisper. But somewhere along the way, things got complicated. Words hung in air, confession laced with truth, ambiguity. As I looked into his eyes, realized I'd walked straight into a web of my own making. Trap I'd willingly set for myself. That evening, returned home, mind reeling. Ethan's words echoing. Too much. Too many secrets, lies. Consumed by my desires, need for escape, hadn't seen consequences waiting in shadows. Walked into penthouse, Richard waiting in living room, face grim, looked up as I entered, eyes cold, distant. Sarah, he said quietly, we need to talk. Words sent chill through me, premonition of confrontation I dreaded. Forced myself to meet his gaze, bracing for whatever was coming. I know you've been seeing someone, he said slowly, voice tight with suppressed anger. I don't know who, frankly, I don't care. But this ends now. Opened my mouth to protest, deny everything. But look in his eyes silenced me. He knew, somehow, known all along. If you want to keep this marriage, this life, you'll put an end to whatever this is, he continued. Voice cold, final. I'm giving you one chance, Sarah. One. Ultimatum hung in air, line drawn in sand, surge of panic. Realization of everything I stood to lose, crashing over me like a wave, come so close to escaping, tasting freedom. Now, facing Richard's anger, trapped once more. Without another word, he turned, walked away, leaving me alone with silence, weight of my choices. Next day, thoughts tangled mess, storm of regret, longing. Richard's words shaken me but hadn't broken spell Jake and Ethan cast. Part wanted to end things, return to safety of old life. Another part, I could no longer deny, craved thrill, danger, they offered. Moment of desperation, called Jake. Needed to see him, feel his presence, escape suffocating reality Richard forced upon me. When he arrived, one look at my face, knew something was wrong. What happened? I told him everything. Richard's ultimatum, fear of losing everything. As I spoke, flicker of something dark in his eyes, glint of ambition, opportunity. Maybe it's time to take matters into your own hands, he suggested, voice low, conspiratorial. Maybe Richard isn't the only one who gets to make the rules. Words stirred something within me. Reckless impulse I'd kept buried too long. Looked at him, mind racing. Dangerous idea taking root. What are you suggesting? I asked, voice barely whisper. Jake leaned in, gaze intense. You deserve to be free, Sarah. And sometimes, freedom comes with a price. Meaning clear. Looked into his eyes, surge of fear, excitement. Knew then, no going back. Jake's words haunted me long after he'd left. That night, in bed beside Richard, could feel tension radiating from him. Silent reminder of ultimatum. Promise of freedom Jake hinted at replayed in my mind. Forbidden melody, thrilled, terrified me. Following morning, couldn't shake thoughts. Richard left for office early, kiss on cheek cold, perfunctory. Man going through motions. Watched him drive away, window, hands clenched around coffee cup. Part of me still loved him, or loved life we'd once shared. But that life, distant memory, relic of time when I'd been willing to settle for comfort over passion. Hours passed, pacing empty penthouse, every creak of floorboards, whisper of life I'd been hiding. Knew what Jake was offering, unthinkable. Reclaim my life, freedom, removing one obstacle. Never considered myself capable of something so drastic. Yet, idea lingered. Forbidden possibility, promised release from prison of marriage. Later that afternoon, called Jake, voice barely steady. "I need to see you," I said, words spilling out before I could reconsider. "Tonight." That evening, met at secluded park outside city, air thick with humidity, cicadas humming, sat on bench, darkness. Jake's gaze steady, unyielding, waiting for me to speak. "I don't know what you're suggesting," I began, voice trembling. "But if this is something you're serious about, then I need to know what it would mean, what it would cost." He reached out, hand covering mine, touch warm, reassuring. "Sarah, I wouldn't be suggesting this if I didn't think it was the best way. You deserve a life that's yours, not something dictated by someone else." Searched his eyes, any sign of deceit, any hint of game. But he looked back, intensity, shiver down my spine. "How would it even work?" I whispered, voice barely audible. He leaned closer, voice low. "There are ways. Accidents happen all the time. People slip up, lose control. If you wanted this, I could make it happen. Discreetly." Words seductive, terrifying, promise of liberation wrapped in darkness. Rational part of me screamed to walk away, forget it ever happened. But part of me, caged, trapped so long, whispered this was my chance. "You'd have to be careful," I said slowly, voice shaking. "Richard, he's not an easy man to fool." Jake nodded. "I understand, but I've been around long enough to know how to handle this. If we do it right, no one would ever know." Finality of words chill down my spine, but forced myself to stay calm. My decision, my chance to reclaim my life. As I looked at Jake, flicker of something I hadn't felt in years, control. For first time, held power to shape my own fate. Days that followed, blur of careful planning, whispered conversations, Jake meticulous, every move calculated, walked me through steps, spoke in code, never Richard's name, secluded places, no one recognized us, tension building between us, silent understanding, point of no return. Each meeting with him, strange mix of fear, exhilaration, thrill, terrified, empowered me. No longer passive, obedient wife, woman taking charge of destiny, even if destiny shrouded in darkness. One evening, car, empty parking lot, Jake laid out final details. "He usually drives home late, right? Takes back road through wooded area?" Nodded, hands clenched. "Yes, he likes to avoid traffic." Jake glanced at me, gaze steady. "All you need to do is make sure he's alone. Rest, I'll handle." Simplicity chilling, pang of guilt, fleeting doubt, pushed it aside, my life, my choice. Couldn't let hesitation hold me back now. "All right," I whispered, voice barely audible. I'll take care of it." Day of the plan arrived, weight of decision pressing down. Each passing hour. Richard left early, as usual, tense expression. Watched him go, strange mix of relief, dread. Might be last time I'd see him alive. Afternoon faded into evening, prepared myself. Going through motions, detached calm, made dinner, set table, waited. Heart pounding, minutes ticked by. Finally, around 8, heard car pull into driveway. He walked in, face tired, gaze wary, looked at me. "Evening, Sarah," he said quietly, tone cold. Distance between us now, rift wider with each day. "Dinner's ready," I replied, forcing smile. "Thought we could talk." Raised eyebrow, glanced at table. "All right." Sat in silence, tension palpable, picking at food. Tried to act normal, hide guilt gnawing at me. Could feel his eyes, watching, questioning. Finally, set fork down, gaze hard. "Is there something you're not telling me, Sarah?" Froze, heart racing. What do you mean?" He leaned forward, eyes piercing. "You've been different lately. Distant. Like you're hiding something." Accusation hung in air. Moment, sure he knew, but forced myself to stay calm. Meet his gaze, steady composure. I'm just tired, Richard. We've both been through a lot. Studied me long moment, then nodded, seeming to accept answer. All right. But if there's something going on, I'll find out. Words sent shiver down my spine. Reminder of man I was dealing with. Richard, not one to be fooled easily. As he stood to leave, pang of fear. Sudden doubt. Terrible mistake, but too late to turn back now. Hours that followed, blur. Whirlwind of emotions left me numb. Jake executed plan flawlessly. No trace, hint of foul play. Richard's car found next morning, wrecked in ravine off back road. Police deemed it accident. Tragic loss, nothing more. Went through motions of grief. Funeral, condolences. But inside, strange emptiness. Hollow no sympathy could fill. Jake was there, by my side. Presence, reminder of life I'd chosen. But as days passed, questioning everything. Motives, actions, price I'd paid for freedom. One evening, alone in empty penthouse, knock at door. Opened it, Ethan standing there, expression unreadable. May I come in? He asked quietly, tone somber. Nodded, stepping aside. He walked in, living room, gaze lingering on framed photos of Richard and me, memories of life, now distant dream. I know what you did, Sarah, he said softly, voice barely whisper, heart raced, fear gripping me, looked at him, unable to speak. But I'm not here to judge, he continued, gaze softening. I thought you should know that Jake isn't who you think he is. Words sent chill down my spine, dawning realization, deceived once more. As Ethan's revelation unfolded, knew my journey far from over, secrets I'd uncovered, only beginning of much darker truth.